As I mentioned, Mike Pence says we're going to keep fighting until every legal vote is counted.
To each and every one of you, I'll make you a promise. As our election contest continues in courthouses across the land, we're going to keep fighting until every legal vote is counted. We're going to keep fighting until every illegal vote is thrown out. And we will never stop fighting to make America great again.
Now, there is a piece in The Hill, which is a publication that covers the doings and goings of Congress. Headline: No, Biden hasn't won yet. One more nightmare scenario. Of course, this is a left-wing publication. That's why they refer to the scenario in which President Trump remains in office as nightmare. But the point is, there is a pathway. Narrow, unlikely, but it exists. By law, House and Senate meet on January 6th. If any state's ballots are challenged by one member of the House and the Senate, the chambers must meet and vote on the challenge. Now, we have, 126 members of Congress that signed on to the Texas lawsuit to overturn Biden's victory. And a number of Republican senators have not accepted Biden as president-elect, so it is pretty obvious that several states are going to be challenged. Now, the controlling federal law is the Electoral Count Act. That's more than 100 years old. It has never been fully used, and some people are even saying it isn't even constitutional. Now, the Congress over which the old vice president will be presiding will be a new one, sworn in on January 3. And the House is narrowly Democratic, as you know, and they're going to vote down any challenge. But the Senate, that's different. Balance right now, 52-48. Let's assume Senators Mitt Romney, Ben Sasse from Nebraska, Collins, Murkowski, they've all said Biden won, and so therefore they would not likely support any effort to unseat delegations of any of the contested states. But even if the Senate votes, it's possible that the Senate could never finish voting. You see, the law limits each challenge to no more than 2 hours of debate. 4 states were questioned in the lawsuit: Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, making 4 challenges and 8 hours of delay. However, the law envisions the ability to challenge electoral votes collectively or individually. And maybe somebody like Ted Cruz might challenge not each state, but each electoral vote separately as a delaying tactic. Goal's not to win, but to delay. Now, the Constitution specifies that if no electoral college has chosen the winner, the Senate chooses the VP and the House picks the president. So the Senate, claiming there's no electoral college result, picks Pence, overturning the election, right? Well, the Democrat majority in the House could conceivably not let that happen by walking out and not having a quorum. Means we might not have a president at all by noon on January 20, and then the law of presidential succession would come into play, says this article in The Hill. And that next person in line would presumably be Nancy Pelosi. Now, will the Supreme Court step in? They would not likely step in any more than they've stepped in so far because, again, this would be a political issue. Now, if you think this is bizarre, Fareed Zakaria, who is hardly a Trump supporter, he has a Sunday show on CNN. Some months ago, here is what he said about how Republicans could keep their power.
But first, here's my take. By declining to commit to a peaceful transfer of power, President Trump has agitated many who fear he will refuse to leave office even if he loses the November election and may even resort to violence. But the terrifying reality is that there are also mechanisms that are legal and constitutional.
Again, this is Fareed Zakaria, CNN, before the election. This is in October.
That could enable Trump to stay in office without actually winning the vote. The system of electing the president is complicated because it was not designed to be directly democratic. The Constitution calls for states to choose the presidential electors, who in turn gather to vote for the president. Over time, states have passed laws that ensured their state's popular vote for the presidency would determine the electors. But those are laws, not a constitutional obligation. Now, imagine the scenario during election week. Trump is leading on November 3rd, but Joe Biden pulls ahead in the days following. Republicans file objections to tens of thousands of mail-in ballots. Democrats file countersuits. Taking account of the confusion, legislators decide to choose the electors themselves. Here's the worry. Of the 9 swing states, 8 have Republican legislatures. If one or more decide that balloting is chaotic and marred by irregularities, they could send what they regard as the legitimate slate of electors, which would be Republican. Democrats may object and file lawsuits. In some of those states, Democratic governors or secretaries of state could send their own slates of electors to Washington. That would add to the confusion, but that might well be part of the Republican plan. Because you see, when Congress convenes on January 6th to tally the electors' votes, there would be challenges to the legitimacy of some electors. It's possible congressional Republicans could decide that disputed states should simply not be counted. Suppose in this scenario, Michigan's votes are invalidated. That would ensure that neither candidate would get to 270 electoral votes. At that point, the Constitution clearly directs that the House of Representatives vote to determine the presidential election. But it does so with each state casting a single ballot. If the current numbers hold, there would be 26 state delegations that are Republican and 23 Democratic, with one tied. So the outcome would be to re-elect Donald Trump. Trump doesn't need to do anything other than to simply accept this outcome, which is constitutional.
More on Fareed Zakaria outlining, this is before the election, a path that President Trump could take in order to remain in office. It would require the support, of course, of the lion's share of Republicans, several of whom have already said that Joe Biden is now the president-elect. We're going to finish this on the other side. And a judge has dismissed the Georgia lawsuit alleging the mishandling of absentee ballots. However, the Secretary of State of Georgia now says there will be a signature audit. Initially, he opposed that. President Trump tweeted that there ought to be a signature audit to make sure that the ballots cast in Georgia were legitimately cast. That apparently is going to happen. The Secretary of State feels it will not likely change the outcome of the election, but there will be a signature audit in Georgia. 888-971-SAGE. I am Larry Elder.